Hey y'all, taking a quick look at another pair of wireless buds in this video. These are the FIIL CC Pro2s. I do think this company has some more attractive looking designs than many others that we've seen in the past. Many of their products are very minimalistic and modern, crafted out of aluminum alloy, and you can kind of see the stems of the buds even when they're in the case because it's semi-open, as you can tell. And the CC Pro2s also claim to have high-res audio wireless certification because they support LDAC, so you can transmit a little bit more detail. Other functions include adaptive active noise cancellation, so depending on your environment, it will change the intensity of the ANC, as well as having multi-point connection, so you can pair with both a phone and a computer at the same time, and depending on what device is playing audio, it will switch back and forth automatically. Buds themselves are IPX4 rated for water resistance, and they also come with a companion app that we'll take a closer look at in a moment to adjust things like the EQ, a ultra low latency mode for gaming, the noise cancellation blocks up to 42 decibels of sound, and the battery case will give you additional 3 top-ups when on the road for a combined total of 32 hours, which is decent. For continuous music listening though, you'll get around 7 to 8 hours depending on if you have ANC on or not. Presentation here is also done in a pretty tasteful way. Slogan here is the art of audio. Buds themselves weigh in at 32 grams, relatively light, with touch-sensitive stems that can be used for play-pause as well as volume adjustment by tapping 3 times on the left or the right sides. And by the way, they are using 10.1mm wool compound diaphragm drivers, so slightly larger than average, should provide you with decent bass. We also get just a USB Type-C charging cable as well as some spare silicone tips. Closer look at the design, it is indeed quite striking for just a pair of wireless buds. It feels extremely premium since everything here is milled from a piece of aluminum alloy. And the buds themselves are pretty easy to pop in and out thanks to this open design, and they're held into place magnetically with some status LEDs on the very top. The very bottom here just features a Type-C port for charging. Now maybe one downside to having a completely metal build is there is no support for Qi wireless charging on the battery case. And arguably, maybe some dust and lint can collect inside a bit more easily. But that's a trade-off for a more fashionable and aesthetic look, I would say. So this is a company that was founded in 2015, and this is actually their 7th year anniversary edition product, which is why this model they've also dubbed as the quote-unquote Sonic Boomer. So it's a milestone representative of the best of design and audio that this company is capable of achieving at the moment. So a closer look at the actual buds. The sharp geometrical look continues, and we do have a ambient light sensor on these as well that can automatically detect if you're wearing them or not to play and pause the music for you automatically. And also the mesh covering up the drivers are crafted out of metal, making it a little more durable and easy to clean. And in terms of ergonomics, they do feel quite similar to something like AirPod Pros, not in a bad way though. The fit is comfortable enough that I was able to wear it without really any complaints after a couple of hours. It wasn't too fatiguing, and even for some light movement and exercise, they still mostly stayed in place. Now here's the FIIL Plus companion app. We can tap on the CC series and then click on the CC Pro2s. Once connected via Bluetooth, you're able to check on the battery percentage remaining on the left, right, as well as in the case itself. By default, it'll be using SBC or AAC. However, you can flick on LDAC if you want to use the higher res wireless transmission, although switching between profiles will require a reboot of the buds. That being said, when it comes to high-res audio, you have to expect slightly higher latency because more data is being transmitted wirelessly. So if you are using this for music listening, appreciating studio albums, and you're more of an audiophile, then it might be worth it, but if you're just watching videos on YouTube or you're gaming, then you may want to turn this actually off, compressing the audio a little bit more, but also decreasing any lag. Now, I also have to point out that LDAC is a codec that unfortunately only works on Android devices at the moment. Therefore, if you're a iOS or iPhone user, you may not get the full benefit of that high-res audio certification, since it's not a codec supported on iPhones at this point in time, unfortunately, particularly because LDAC was initially developed by Sony. So hopefully it's something that we see change one day if Apple also adopts this codec supported on their devices, but that is the situation at the moment. Now in the center tab, you can go into EQ control. So by default, it's in a balanced mode, but I can also make it more bass boosted versus treble boosted. Alternatively, you can go into some preset EQs. You can find classic, jazz, cinema, metal, pop, R&B, dance, rock, electronic, so on and so forth, or a custom EQ mode where you can tweak the frequency sliders yourself. And all of these EQs do make a subtle difference as you're listening to music. That being said, there is no hearing test mode that you find on some Anker Soundcore buds that are also flagship grade. So maybe that's one software feature that would be nice to add later on down the line to make them more competitive. So right now you have more of those manual controls that you can select between. You can also go into ANC controls, either a kind of regular ANC, or you can use open, aka audio transparency mode, that will use the microphones to amplify the sound around you so you can hear what's going on if you're walking down a street without actually removing the buds. Alternatively, you can go into the adaptive profile, which will just change accordingly. Again, based on your surroundings, it will fluctuate the intensity of the ANC effect. You can also turn on and off a ear pressure dynamic adjustment profile, which is new, but I think the effect is quite similar to adaptive ANC, to be completely honest, but just claims to be a little bit more comfortable if you're wearing it, reducing some of the pressure that past models of ANC headphones can create if you're wearing them for longer periods of time. Further down below here, you can also turn on and off some of the voice prompts, such as connecting to Bluetooth, power on, power off. You can mute that, or change the volume of those voice prompts as well. So everything here is customizable. And then on the final tab, this is where you can go into the low latency mode, which is actually a little bit more detailed than what we usually see. So if you are watching back videos, it's more like a medium low latency mode versus ultra low latency when you're gaming. So there's two different tiers compared to just a one-size-fit-all on most other buds that we've seen in the past. Under additional controls, you're able to remap the double click, hold for 2 seconds, 1 click, and 3 seconds to trigger different commands or disable certain ones that you're not using, as well as turning on and off certain features in the noise cancellation loop. For instance, if you want to turn off the audio transparency, only activate ANC when you're long holding, you can also trigger those commands, as well as a sleep aid mode. So this is trying to imitate something like earplugs. It just turns on active noise cancellation. You can even use it in a quote-unquote offline mode without listening to music necessarily. It will disable any incoming notifications from the phone, only blocking out noise, and when you pop them into the case again, it will take you out of that sleep aid function. I think this is a neat idea. However, again, these aren't really designed exclusively for sleeping, since they're still a bit larger in terms of their size compared to sleep buds that we've seen in the past, but nonetheless, a neat little software feature if you're just sitting down, taking a quick nap, maybe. You can also turn on and off that wearing detection, as well as enable the voice assistant on your phone to be controlled, and check if there's any firmware updates. So the app itself, I think, is pretty complimentary, relatively easy to adjust and control. That being said, again, there is just no hearing test mode that would be nice to add, considering that these are a pair of flagship grade buds. Moving into audio quality and performance, glad to report that the CC Pro2s don't disappoint. You do get plenty of detail here. It's very clean sounding, so if you are pausing the music or turning the volume down, very little traces of any distortion, static, or hissing in the background. And the actual audio itself is quite rich. It's impactful when you're listening to drum beats without it being overpowering either, but definitely you can feel that presence if you're listening to pop music, EDM, or rock, and has sufficient volume for you to get sucked into the music as you're exercising without it actually feeling too thin or screechy at the higher volume levels either. So it results in a very comfortable listening experience, despite it being just a single driver pair of buds. Now, if we had to nitpick, perhaps for really discerning audiophiles, you can squeeze in even more detail in elements like trebles, using maybe a dual or triple driver setup. However, many of those multi-driver buds typically have larger overall form factors, a little bit heavier to wear versus these are quite light, and honestly I think these are good sounding enough that I wasn't left longing for anything else when I was actually wearing them and just appreciating the music. So audio is very solid here. In fact, I would dare say even a little bit more detailed as well as well-rounded compared to something like AirPods or AirPod Pros, which is high praise considering that the CC Pro2s here are still going to be more affordable at the end of the day, and despite that you do get a much more premium construction as well, again crafted out of metal. So again, the good news here, it's not just a case of style over substance, but the audio itself does also hold up, and I don't think you'll be disappointed with the sound when it comes to volume. Stability of the audio connection is also very good, and the active noise cancellation effectiveness was also good. I would say around average in this department. It indeed blocks out, I I would say over 90% of sound, if you are listening to engine noises, lower frequency fan noises, they get mostly repressed. It doesn't really change the audio tuning or profile either. So the music in terms of volume as well as kind of the EQ stays the same regardless if you have ANC turned on or off, which is also pleasant. When I transitioned from a louder space into a more quiet zone, it also tried to tone down the ANC intensity a bit so I could discern it, trying to adapt based on my scenarios. So that is more or less it as far as our quick hands-on review of the FIIL CC Pro2, aka Sonic Boomer. That name, though, might be a little over-ambitious, considering these don't bring anything we haven't necessarily seen in the past. For instance, FIIL have been making kind of metal-based wireless buds for a hot minute now. That being said, the sound as well as performance is indeed really solid. And so if you do like the overall presentation and design, I would say that these are still going to be worth considering. It's a solid alternative to some of the best from Soundcore as well as Earfun and QCY that we have seen in a similar sub $100 price range. You can learn more detail if you are interested in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the CC Pro 2